William Shakespeare. I mean, the name itself just means genius, right? But here's the thing. Geniuses don't just pop into existence out of nowhere. They're built on the foundations of everything that came before them. So today, we're going to dig in and uncover the incredible story of how the stage was set for, well, the greatest playwright in history.
It was actually his greatest rival, Ben Jonson, who said it best. He was not of an age, but for all time. It's one of the most famous things ever said about a writer. And what we're going to explore is how. How could one playwright from one specific time and place manage to create something so universal, so absolutely timeless?
And that really brings us to the big question for this whole explainer. How did the world of English drama get so perfectly tuned to become the launchpad for a talent like William Shakespeare? The answer, it turns out, is a story of total revolution in art, in business, and in ideas.
Okay, so our story really starts with this massive shift. Before Shakespeare, drama in England was a completely different animal. It was finally leaving the world of the church and stepping out into the bright lights of commerce and entertainment.
And just look at this. This slide lays the change out so clearly. You go from religious stories with amateur actors performing in town squares to humanist stories, all about the human experience, performed by actual professionals in brand new, permanent theaters. This wasn't just a small adjustment, it was a complete reboot of the entire art form.
So, where did all the ideas for these new plays even come from? Well, they didn't just invent them from scratch. The writers of the English Renaissance were master adapters. They reached way back into the ancient world and basically dusted off the old blueprints left behind by the great Roman playwrights.
For tragedy, their main guy was the Roman writer Seneca. Do these sound familiar? The 5-act structure, plots all about revenge, ghosts demanding justice, and of course, those huge, powerful speeches where characters just bare their souls. All of these became the essential ingredients for Elizabethan tragedy. Seriously, think of Hamlet. It is pure Seneca, just refined and taken to a whole new level.
And for comedy, they were borrowing heavily from Plautus and Terence. This is where they got all the fun stuff, the machinery for their plots. Mistaken identities, clever servants running circles around their masters, and most importantly, that sharp, witty dialogue that just feels so real and alive. These classical models gave them the skeleton, the structure they needed to build this new English drama.
And this shows you just how fast everything started moving. Once the art form had a blueprint, it needed a home. So, in 1576, a guy named James Burbage builds the theater, the very first of its kind in London. And then, boom, a whole district of playhouses just springs up, including, of course, the legendary Globe. For the very first time, there was a permanent commercial home for plays. Now, this is so crucial. With permanent theaters came a brand new industry. Acting became a real, full-time job. Famous companies started forming, like Shakespeare's own, the Lord Chamberlain's Men. And because these companies needed a constant stream of new plays to keep the audiences coming back, suddenly, you could actually make a living as a professional playwright. The artist could now get paid for their craft.
So the stages are built, the acting profession is established. The moment was absolutely perfect for a group of brilliant, ambitious young writers to storm the scene. They were educated at Oxford and Cambridge, and today we know them as the university wits. These guys were the first true architects of Elizabethan drama. And this table is a great way to see who brought what to the party. Each of these writers added a key ingredient. John Lyly gave plays that sparkling, witty dialogue. Thomas Kyd pretty much invented the whole revenge tragedy genre that would eventually lead to Hamlet. Robert Greene created the template for romantic comedy. And then there was the giant Christopher Marlowe. I mean, just listen to that line. That's Marlowe's mighty line. He took the poetic form of blank verse and basically supercharged it, filling it with this incredible passion, power, and ambition. His heroes, like Dr. Faustus, were absolutely larger than life. He showed everyone what the English language could do on stage, creating the very poetic voice that Shakespeare would inherit. Okay, so the foundation has been laid. The materials are all there. We've got the theaters, the actors, the classical models, and this powerful poetic language. Now, the master builder arrives to construct the cathedral. But here's the amazing twist. Shakespeare didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. He wasn't one of the wits. His university was the theater itself.
He learned by reading the classics, sure, but also by watching and acting in the plays of Marlowe and Kyde, and by having this deep, practical, hands-on understanding of what actually worked on a stage.
And you can literally watch his genius develop across his career. He starts as an apprentice, and you can see him borrowing tricks from his predecessors. Then he hits his maturity, mastering his own unique style in comedies and histories. And that, of course, leads to that mind-blowing third period, the Great Tragedies, where he just dives deeper into the human soul than anyone had ever gone before. And finally, he wraps it all up with the romances, these beautiful plays about magic and forgiveness. What an incredible journey.
And get this, here's a staggering fact for you. 18. That number is how many of his plays, including masterpieces like Macbeth and The Tempest, we would have lost forever. They were never published while he was alive, and were only saved because his friends, his fellow actors, gathered them all together in what we call the first folio after he died. It's honestly chilling to think how close we came to never knowing his full genius. Now, you can't really talk about Shakespeare without talking about his greatest contemporary, his biggest rival, Ben Jonson. And honestly, understanding Jonson is one of the best ways to understand what made Shakespeare so unique. A later writer, John Dryden, absolutely nailed the difference between them. Jonson was the one you admired. You respected his intelligence, his discipline, his classical perfection. But Shakespeare? Shakespeare was the one you loved for his raw humanity and his mystery. See, Jonson's big innovation was something called the comedy of humors. The idea was that each character was completely dominated by a single personality trait, a humor. So you'd have a greed-obsessed character or a wildly jealous one. His plays were like these brilliant, satirical machines designed to expose just how foolish people can be. And this comparison right here gets to the absolute heart of it. Jonson wanted to correct humanity, to satirize it. He was a moralist, a brilliant one. Shakespeare, though, he wasn't trying to correct humanity. He was trying to explore it in all its messy, poetic, beautiful, and complicated glory. Two total geniuses with two completely different goals. So, when we pull the camera all the way back, what we see isn't just one solitary genius working in a vacuum. We see an entire golden age, a cultural explosion that changed theater forever. I mean, the legacy of this period is just immense. It gave us the professional theater industry as we know it, it perfected dramatic poetry, and most importantly, it created a whole new kind of art form, one that could ask the deepest questions about what it means to be human. These weren't just plays, they were the building blocks of all modern drama. Which really leaves us with one final thought. We rightly celebrate Shakespeare as this singular, once-in-a-millennium genius. But when you look back at the incredible stage that was set for him, you have to ask, without all those architects who came before, the ones who drew the blueprints and mixed the mortar, would the master builder have even had the tools he needed to create something truly for all time? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.